exactly. I'm untouchable, uncrushable. Running in a 600, running in a 600. Untouchable, uncrushable. Running in a 600, running in a 600.
Welcome to another edition of Punch to the Face Radio. I am your host, Brandon Stubbs. Appreciate you joining me here. On this episode, we will talk about Porter Thurman getting canceled, Anderson Silva, Michael Bisping, and also an interview with Ricky Salmon of Titan FC. But first, we're going to start off this week speaking about the news that broke in regards to UFC 196. UFC 196 now has a new main event. Rafael dos Santos was set to defend his lightweight championship against Conor McGregor, but unfortunately he ended up breaking his foot. So he broke his foot, and then the scramble was on to find a replacement. There was a list of people and other people volunteering their services via social media. Everyone thought it would be Conor McGregor versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone, but instead it's going to be Nate Diaz. Yes, Nate Diaz gets the call against Conor McGregor in an actual welterweight fight. So it's going to be a welterweight of that fight instead of at lightweight or even at featherweight. So it's going to be actually here at welterweight. Diaz taking the fight here roughly on about 12 days notice in a big main event. Now, for Diaz hasn't won back-to-back fights here since 2012. That's when he beat Jim Miller and then Donald Cerrone here, respectively back-to-back at the end of 2011 and again another win in 2012. Since then, he's kind of been off and on. He's suffered losses to Ben Henderson, losses to Josh Thompson, and along with a very dominating loss to Rafael dos Anjos here in 2014. The only fight he had in 2015 was a win over Michael Johnson here in December, and after that fight, he went on a expletive-laced rant during the post-fight interview, pretty much calling out Conor McGregor and wanting to fight with Conor McGregor at that time. So, to Diaz's credit, Diaz finally gets what he asked for. He now gets Conor McGregor, who is, probably the most polarizing figure right now in mixed martial arts. Conor right now is riding very high since signing with the UFC. He's won all of his fights, including a spectacular 13-second knockout of Jose Aldo here at UFC 194 this past December to capture the featherweight championship. He's going to be moving up in weight to face Rafael dos Anjos for the lightweight championship. Now we don't know if that will ever happen or what. What makes this interesting is a couple of different things. To Conor's credit, Conor was willing to fight anybody the UFC threw at him. Now, there's been a couple of different things in regards to the weight that he was willing to fight at. It's very interesting that he's actually willing to fight at welterweight here for this bout, and not at the lightweight limit that he was originally scheduled to fight against dos Anjos at. So that's one thing that's kind of a little tricky here. Now, what this does is a couple of different things if Conor wins. If Conor wins, Conor pretty much has the UFC by the proverbial balls. He can either, demand that when dos Anjos is healthy, he still gets that lightweight championship fight, which, he could still have legitimate, gripe to. Or B, he could say, hey, I've just fought somebody on short notice at welterweight. I want a fight at the welterweight championship here at UFC 200, which is what everyone's speculating that is something he was angling for one way or the other. Whether, if he won and beat dos Anjos, he was going to want to move up and fight for the welterweight championship at UFC 200. So that's also an option. But then there's C. C is, if Conor were to lose, the UFC is screwed. Now, you got to keep the scenario in mind. Conor currently is the featherweight champion. Now, that's at 145 pounds. He struggled and looked damn near death during the weigh-in here in December when he fought Jose Aldo. He looked like death also when he fought Chad Mendes in July of last year, cutting down to the weight. They said the weight cut was too tough for him. He couldn't really do it. Dana White had said even, prior to UFC 194 that he didn't think that, that Conor would fight anymore at featherweight. So, does he now permanently move to lightweight? Does he now permanently move to welterweight? You have to keep in mind, he's going to be fighting at 170 pounds here at UFC 196. it's going to be tough for his body to cut that weight back down to get down to 145 pounds to ever defend the featherweight championship. Don't think we'll ever see him there fighting in that weight class again. So they're going to need to do something with that title belt. And then if he were to lose, where does he really go? I mean, granted, yes, he is the featherweight champion, but if he can't make the weight, he can't defend the belt. So he's pretty much useless for them there. You can't put him right back into a lightweight championship fight against Rafael Dos Anjos because he lost to a guy that Rafael Dos Anjos dominated at lightweight in Nick Diaz. So what exactly do you do with him? And then if Nick Diaz wins, I mean, that really throws everything for a damn loop. Does he stay at welterweight since he's fighting here on short notice? And, does he think he can actually hang with the guys there in the welterweight division? Does that now springboard him into another lightweight championship fight against Dos Anjos? Now, this is a really much a crapshoot for the UFC. I mean, what they can hope for is a really close, competitive, fun fight, or if it's a blowout one way or the other, it could get real interesting from a business aspect and a strategy standpoint for them going forward, because a lot of things are hinging on the way this fight plays out here, UFC 196 for UFC 200, because that's something a lot of people are aiming for and thinking that's going to be a big major event for the UFC, and feel that for that to be truly successful from a business and money side of it, Conor McGregor will need to be a part of it, since he's such a polarizing figure, such a name that rings here in the sport right now. So it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out here. So obviously here on the next show, we will recap UFC 196, which we can't forget that the co-main event that night is going to be Miesha Tate versus Holly Holm. Holly Holm's going to be making her first title defense of her women's championship belt. Miesha Tate's been, the long-standing next contender in line. No one really wanted to see her in a third fight with Ronda Rousey, so Holm ended up getting the call here last year and ended up getting the biggest knockout win of her career. But, I really think this is actually a better matchup for Tate against Holm than it would be Tate against Ronda Rousey a third time. Still think Holly Holm is going to win the fight, but I do think Miesha Tate's going to bring something a little bit more different and more diverse than what Ronda had to offer Holly Holm. So I think that's a hell of a fight that unfortunately is kind of flying under the radar with everything that's going on here with the main event. They're fighting for a championship and they're the co-feature of the night. So would have been nice if they could have got elevated to the main event, but I understand it as a business, so Conor McGregor and Diaz will remain as those gentlemen are the main event of the night. So that card is going to be live on UFC pay-per-view from Las Vegas. Also on the main card, you'll have Corey Anderson versus Tom Lawler. You'll have another women's bantamweight bout here with Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shlevenko. Hopefully I'm enunciating that right. The names really don't, scream out at you here on the main card. You got some names to look forward to here on the preliminary card. You got Brandon Thatch fighting. You've got Darren Elkins and Chase Skelly. Diego Sanchez and Jim Miller are actually going to be the headlining fight of the preliminary card on UFC Fight Pass. Now, this is kind of one of those weird things to where you have two veterans, two names in the sport who are on the preliminary card of your online streaming system. Now, I understand the strategy here by the UFC. Put these guys on that preliminary card, drive the traffic there to UFC Fight Pass, get people to sign up for it. But if you're these two guys, I mean, these guys have been, they've headlined fights. They fought for championships. They've been, long-standing veterans here with the UFC. But, you're now headlining the preliminary card of UFC 196, and you're on the internet. You're on UFC Fight Pass. I mean, I guess you can take what you can get, but a fight like that deserves a little bit more shine. Should be on the main card, should at least be headlining the preliminary card that'll be airing on Fox Sports 1. But instead, those two gentlemen are on UFC Fight Pass. So that should be an interesting scrap. Should really help set the tone for the night. I think that's one of those kind of fights that's definitely a tone setter that shouldn't be a boring fight, should be very entertaining. What was also entertaining here this weekend was UFC Fight Night over in London. That was also on UFC Fight Pass, headlined by Michael Bisping and Anderson Silva. A very odd card, a very odd fight. The rest of the card was ho-hum at best, but I'm just going to really harp on the main event here. Bisping won a unanimous decision. I don't completely agree with it, really because the way the fight happened here in the third round. Now, for anyone who's seen the fight, you saw here the closing of the third round. You had Anderson Silva was landing shots, had Michael Bisping up against the cage. Bisping's mouthpiece fell out. Bisping thought it was a break in action and said something to the ref and looked at the ref about his mouthpiece, pointed down. He ended up catching a flying knee from Anderson Silva and got subsequently knocked out. He's definitely suffered a pretty bad cut below his eye, and his nose was bleeding as well. Had a cut on the bridge of his nose. And Anderson Silva, for all intents and purposes, thought the fight was over. The bell had rung. He's on the cage celebrating. He's dancing. And, the refs and everybody is trying to tell him, no, the fight's not over. The fight's not over. Because the bell had rung. One thing that may have to happen in MMA is you can't be saved by the bell rule like they have in boxing. We've seen it in boxing to where somebody lands a flurry right as the bell rings. Somebody gets knocked out. You still have to get up from the 10 count. I think that's something the MMA has to somewhat look at. I mean, granted, these things don't happen too much. Now, I'm not saying that once the bell rings, you have to continue to keep a submission hold on until someone is able to get out or tap out. But I think there's something that has to be examined, especially in the striking game. With something like that, Anderson Silva, in my eyes, had the fight won. And, the way that ended, you never know what kind of emotional drop that took out of him. He ended up losing on the fight. I thought the first round was really a very close round to score. I thought Anderson won the third. I thought Bisping won the second. The fourth, I thought Anderson won because Bisping was still kind of out of it from being knocked out in the end of the third round. And the fifth round was another a push, round, but Bisping won that. So I actually had Bisping winning on the cards, but it wasn't convincing. I also will say this: Michael Bisping shouldn't be overly proud of that fight. Now, granted, I know a win's a win, and he's saying, this was a guy I'd looked up to my whole career. I've wanted this fight for so many years. If you see Michael Bisping's face after this fight, he did not look like a gentleman who won the fight. His face was completely busted up. So he can't be 100% proud of I don't want to say the outcome of this. I still don't think he's a championship contender. I see if he were to fight Weidman or Rockhold, he would get beat. If he were to fight Vitor Belfort again, drugs or not, Vitor Belfort probably beat him again. So I don't see Bisping making a title run after this fight. You have to keep in mind, Anderson Silva is old. I mean, not to disrespect Bisping's win at all, but you're talking about a man in Anderson Silva who right now he's 40 years old. He's coming off of being suspended, which was coming off of a leg injury. So I mean, Anderson Silva actually hasn't won a fight since 2012. So you can't take too much and read too much into you beating a Anderson Silva at this stage in his career as being a huge momentum win. It'd be a little bit different if Bisping completely dominated this fight, didn't get busted up, didn't get knocked out, to where I could say, okay, tip my hat to him, he won. But this way and the way that fight ended and the circumstances around it, I'm just not all that sold on it. But we shall see. As far as what goes next with Anderson Silva, I don't know how much you can. I mean, you can still marketing. People still watching fight. Like I said, it was a close fight against Bisping, to where even UFC President Dana White said he thought Silva had won. So I mean, I don't know. You could find him against somebody. Somebody will be willing to fight him. You could put him on UFC 200 card. That'll help the pay-per-view buys, because that's what it's all going to be about, is be the pay-per-view buys for that. So, I mean, he's marketable still. Granted, like I said, he hasn't won a fight in almost going on 4 years now. We're over 3 years now since he's won a fight. I don't know. We shall see. It should be very, very interesting to see what happens next here with Anderson Silva and both Michael Bisping. But Bisping's going to need some time to heal. Another guy who won on the fight card there in London was Gegard Mousasi beat Talis Latis. Now, it was another one of those fights to where it was not really that great. It was kind of a ho-hum fight. What I will say is, Gegard Mousasi making some very outlandish comments post-fight, accusing people of steroid use, dropping F-bombs. So he's trying to get some buzz and make his name a little bit more marketable. I get that, Gegard. You want to get you some attention, but you have to be careful when you're throwing out allegations of steroid use and other things, and you want to be sure what trees you bark up, because quite honestly, Gegard hasn't looked that great here as of late. He suffered a knockout loss to Uriah Hall here last year. Yeah, he beat Constance Philippou and Dan Henderson last year, but he's lost against some top contenders. You know, Jacare, he's lost against Machida. So when he stepped up in competition, he has lost. He can beat that lower tier, that next tier, that second tier of middleweights. But as far as the top middleweights in the world go, Gegard has struggled and he has lost. So I don't think Gegard right now is in a prime position to start throwing out names and calling out people and wanting to do anything with that, because I don't see him making much noise. I honestly see him with a fight here with Michael Bisping may be the next thing up. With Yoel Romero's situation in regards to his drug testing kind of up in the air. We know Rockhold and Weidman are going to fight again. We have Belfort and Jacare fighting. So, as far as you start looking at that, the top 10 rankings and who's available and who could fight who, that looks to be the next thing. It could be him against Bisping, and Gegard Mousasi could be a matchup we could see here down the line. But what we're going to do is we're going to get into our interview here of the week. Ricky Simone here of Titan FC 37. Now, Ricky's going to be fighting for the vacant championship belt here, the vacant bantamweight championship there for Titan FC. His opponent has changed, but his mindset really hasn't. He's going to be headlining that card live on UFC Fight Pass there in his pretty much his hometown area. So Ricky talks to me about the pressure fighting in front of the home crowd, and as well as going for his first major championship. So here's Ricky Simone here on. Right now I'm joined by Ricky Simone, who's going to be in the main event at Titan FC 37 here on March 4th, live from the Clark County Fairgrounds, Ridgefield, Washington. He's going to be in a big title fight. So Ricky, man, how's training camp going?
It's been going great, man. I've been with my Team Rose City Fight Club, and we've been doing what we always do, and everyone's in there. I got a couple teammates on this card too, so we're all in there pushing each other. It's been great.
Now, plans kind of altered a little bit for you in regards to this fight. Originally you're going to face Brett Johns, but now the belt is now a vacant title fight here against Anderson Dos Santos. Did that change any of your mindset going now into the fight? Now that you're not going to be fighting the champion, you're now going to be fighting for a vacant belt. Does that kind of change anything in ways that you think about this fight, or is it still a title fight one way or the other?
It definitely sucked to hear, because I was really looking forward to fighting Brett. He's a tough dude. He's 12-0, and I really want to be the one to give him that loss. But it doesn't really change anything. I've been training really hard. I'm in phenomenal shape. Still preparing for that, 5-round war. So, nothing's really changed in training besides, having to train for a little bit different style of opponent. I think Anderson's a little more explosive, and especially in certain areas. So, just a different kind of opponent, but we kind of sticking with the same game plan, and so nothing changed too much, and we're still looking to come out on top and get that belt.
Well, absolutely. Like you said, you're going to be kind of facing a different opponent in a different style than Anderson Dos Santos. Granted, luckily it wasn't like too short of a notice to where you're able to kind of implement some new things in training camp, but did you have to change a few things up here in the recent weeks since the news is broke that Johnson's going to be out?
Yeah, just Anderson has some other, obviously, he's a different fighter, has some different habits and different moves that he likes to do. So I have some teammates kind of imitating what he does, and just switching up that game planning for that different style. But everything else is still the same. The conditioning, the jiu-jitsu, everything else is that point. Just little adjustments on the feet that we've been working on.
Now, is it any added pressure that not only that this is a title fight, but you're the main event in a title fight on UFC Fight Pass for Titan FC for their first promotion here of 2016?
I don't know if there's I don't know if I'm putting any more pressure on myself, but I still, it's same as every other fight, just training with those extra 2 rounds. I think I already put a lot of pressure on myself anyways, and I have an awesome support system and an awesome gym, so I'm sure I'll feel it fight night, but I don't feel anything right now and haven't this entire camp.
Right now you got a lot of buzz, surrounding your name, and especially around this bout. If you were to win, and I know people are already kind of clamoring, saying, "Oh, when are you going to get into the UFC?" Because Titan has kind of been a springboard and a platform for fighters to do that. How are you handling this buzz of being, one of these top prospects in your division, but you still want to kind of take it slow and not go about it too fast?
Yeah, definitely. Titan has been great to me. I love fighting for them. In September, and I'm super excited to be fighting for the belt in March. But I'm just focused on this fight right now, and hopefully I go in there and put on a great show. And whether I need to defend that belt once I get it, or I make that jump, but that'll all come in time.
Well, absolutely. Well, again, man, 7-0 prospect Ricky. Excuse me, I'm getting all choked up and emotional here in the interview. Ricky Simone joining us here on Punch to the Face. Like you said, you're able to handle everything so greatly with that. But, like I said, fans are a little bit different. Fans are, I don't want to say fickle, but they can be a little bit fickle. How are you handling now that added attention that you're getting? Because I know you're getting a lot more attention now on social media. I know you're getting probably tweets from people, and you get a lot more come closer to fight night and during fight night, but obviously you can't see those. How does somebody young like yourself here in the sport and who's still growing, how do you deal with that side of stardom and rising amongst the ranks?
I haven't experienced it too much, just here and there, and, for the most part, people are super nice, and I kind of understand they don't see the entire, they don't see the full side of it. They don't see me putting in 3 or 4 training sessions a day, they just see that one night, that 15 minutes, or however long the fight, however long they see me fight for, so, it's been good and bad, but mostly good, so, it's always exciting when, you have like a young fan or something come up and ask you to sign something, so, it's definitely exciting. I'm looking forward to more of it.
Well, absolutely. Well, again, man, you're going to be a part of Titan FC 37 live on UFC Fight Pass March 4th here. Again, UFC Fight Pass, Clark County Fairgrounds. Fans can get tickets at cagetix.com/Titan. Ricky, man, make sure you plug and give a shout out to those sponsors helping you get ready here for the fight.
Yeah, I have an awesome support system from local businesses and businesses all over. I'd like to thank King Craft, Vitality Chiropractic and Wellness, CNA Roofing, Bridge City Fight Shop, Evolution Healthcare and Fitness, Recharge Northwest, Lay Right, 20 Today's Nutrition, RDX Sports, Family First Life, Hula Boy, and my gym, Rose City Fight Club, and all my coaches, Andy Mesker and Ian Loveland, and Josh Watkins, and all my teammates in there, grinding with me, getting ready for this big fight.
Now, we know when you had your fight here in September for Titan FC, you had a crazy crowd reaction and response. Do you think that the numbers are going to be even larger this time around for you, given the chance that you're fighting for a title fight? Will the fan response be even louder that the people can hear on Fight Pass?
Oh yeah, you can multiply that by at least 2 or 3. It's gonna be big. There's a lot of people out.
Well, absolutely. Well, again, man, we appreciate you taking out time with us here. We know you're tired here from training and getting it in. You're putting in that work. We're going to see that work on display here again, March 4th, UFC Fight Pass, Titan FC 37. You're going to be fighting for the vacant Bantamweight Championship against Anderson Dos Santos. Again, Ricky, we appreciate you taking out time with us, my man. You take it easy, okay?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, no worries. Thank you. Big thank you to Ricky there of Titan FC for taking out time with me here to talk about his fight again. UFC Fight Pass here, March 4th. You can watch him in action and go for a championship belt. To close the show here, something that we will not see here in the coming weeks is Keith Thurman versus Shawn Porter here in boxing. Now, this fight was set here for March 12th, but it ended up getting canceled because Keith Thurman was in a car accident. Now, he was in a car accident. He hurt himself. Not much detail has really came out as far as specifics of his injuries go, but he's just not going to be able to fight. So at first the card was going to possibly go on with Abner Mares staying on the card against Fernando Montel, but the card itself got completely scrapped. Now, depending on who you listen to, there's a couple of different things here in regards to this fight. Now, There are some reports saying that they actually sold 60% of the capacity of tickets prior to the fight getting canceled, which was about 2 weeks out from the fight getting canceled. So they were at 60% capacity. Then there's other reports where I've heard they've actually were only at 40% capacity in regards to tickets. So, it's neither here nor there. It was a weird fight because it really seemed like the boxing community didn't give a shit about it, truth be told. The fight really didn't get much promotion. They were actually going to land in a prime spot in regards to being on CBS on March 12th. That was going to be right after some of the college basketball conference tournaments. So they were going to get a prime spot in prime time after basketball. You'd have some of the still audience from watching basketball that would maybe tune in or be at a bar drunk and watch boxing. So they were set to be in a primetime audience, but no one really knew about it. I mean, the fight really didn't get much publicity from Premier Championship Boxing, a.k.a. Al Heyman. CBS really wasn't marketing it in any. You weren't seeing these fighters doing much press in regards to major television outlets, which is something, again, that I often harp on. If you're going to have a big fight, you have to be able to promote it, and that's something I just don't see enough of from Premier Championship Boxing. They just don't do it. Or Premier Boxing Champions, or whatever they're called. They just don't do enough of actually promoting their fighters and promoting these cards out there enough. I mean, they flood the market with these cards, but don't promote them. Now, as far as the fight goes with Shawn Porter and Keith Thurman, it is postponed. Now, as far as a date goes, they don't know. It's still planned to be on CBS at some juncture. But quite honestly, I don't think it'll really matter at this point. I think it's one of those things a lot of people are over. This was a fight that was delayed for quite some time from getting booked. When it got booked, it really seemed that Shawn Porter was all about it. He was, definitely everywhere smiling. And we really only saw Keith a few places doing, much publicity or promotion in regards to it. So he didn't do a lot of promotion behind it. And I've said before, I really don't think Keith Thurman's mind is completely into boxing. I really think that he's just a different dude. And I honestly don't see this fight happening. And I really only don't see him really fighting much going forward, unless he's broke. I just don't think that his heart and mind are 100% into boxing. And when it's not, it's not going to be there. Now, I'm not the only one who kind of feels this way. Shawn Porter's father, Kenny, had even said, he wants some details. He wants to see some reports, some doctor's notes in regards to Keith Thurman being hurt and what have you, and this fight getting postponed, because he kind of sees the same thing that I see. He kind of sees a guy who may not really be 100% into the fight, may not have really wanted the fight, took the fight, and then just fought the way to get out of the fight. So right now, this is going to put Shawn Porter on ice. PBC is still saying that they're going to hold off before they book any sort of other fight with him. So Porter looks like he's probably only going to get one fight this year, and at some point it'll be Keith Thurman until that falls completely apart, and then he's going to be scrambling for another opponent. Really unfair to him. It's unfair to boxers when this kind of stuff happens. He should be given an option to, if he wants to find another fight, if the fight's not going to be scheduled again here remotely soon, within the next 60 days, go ahead and get another opponent lined up, whether it be a soft touch or a big name. Stay busy, stay active, and get a paycheck. But right now, they've got him on ice until Thurman heals up. As far as Abner Maris goes, his fight with Montiel is still going to stay packaged with this fight card as well. So those two gentlemen also be on ice waiting to see what happens with Thurman and Porter. So those guys, the work they put in, they're now scrapped and they're now on pause until they figure out what they're going to do. Now, everybody else who's on that card and scheduled to fight, my understanding is those guys will still get an opportunity to fight. They'll just get kind of spread apart on other PBC cards here throughout the year, which there's a ton of that a lot of people still don't know about. So, as they schedule them out, they'll get those together. So, but, and I have to say this, though, for both Shawn Porter and Keith Thurman, for their fight getting canceled, they get this. We waited months and months and months, and now the fight doesn't happen. Probably won't happen. So I just really wish these two gentlemen would move on and go on their different paths and maybe try this again next year, and don't kind of keep him humming around about this bout, because quite honestly, at the welterweight division, it really doesn't matter that much, because with Floyd Mayweather not being around, there is no golden ticket for anyone out there. So go find another fight, build yourself up, and go collect belts. But that's it for this week's show. Again, as always, make sure you hit the subscribe button if this is your first time listening. So go to the main page at P2TF Radio at Podomatic. and subscribe there. And also, when you're on the main page, make sure you click on that PayPal button. Donate and support the cause. We appreciate that. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, punch_2the face. And as well, feel free to email me at brandon@punchtheface.com. We are working on some different things here soon. We're going to have a podcast just about boxing. We're going to call it The Burn. So look for that to come real soon. I have some guests who are going to help me out with that. It's going to be fun. It's going to be quality hate at its highest level in regards to the sport of boxing. So I do have some of my boxing friends helping me out with that. So look for that. Make sure you check punchtheface.com for latest press release news and pound-for-pound rankings. We always have new stuff up there, and as well as interviews with fighters. So shout out to Rebecca Ruth, who appeared on the show here a couple of weeks ago, who got her big victory at Bellator 150. She got some of that good karma coming on the show, so I want to give her a definite shout out for her very convincing and dominating win at Bellator 150. So best of luck to her and the rest of her career. Now she's going to be making an impact there within the division there for Bellator. So just wanted to give her a shout out. But until next time, everybody be safe, be blessed, and I'm out.